Batman do? It's simple, right? Batman fights crime. He beats up criminals and sends them to jail. Sure, he may sometimes go to space or fight Superman, but at his core, Batman is a vigilante, a crime fighter. But that invites an obvious problem. What is crime, exactly? Who defines what crime is? Traditionally, Batman has worked alongside Commissioner Gordon, a symbol of incorruptible authority for the law. But what if Gordon wasn't there? What if someone with less convictions was in charge? What would Batman do then? Batman Arkham City is one of the most beloved and most famous video games of all time, and if you're hoping for one of my famous Kyle's contrarian takes here, then you're going to be disappointed, because this game rules! Arkham City generally tops the lists of best superhero games whenever they're written, and for good reason. It's a fantastic game, but more importantly, it's a fantastic Batman story. Although maybe that's not the best way to frame it. Arkham Asylum is a Batman story. Batman is the main character and he fights some bad guys. It's like an episode of the animated series. Arkham City is a story about Batman. He's not just the protagonist, but the focus of the narrative. The game is committed to exploring him not just as a hero, but as a man. And that's the true trick of Arkham City. Arkham City starts with an inversion of Asylum's intro. You know, for the third time, because they also did that in Arkham Asylum, but this one is more thematically relevant. Once again, it's Batman's turn to be brought into the asylum, except it's not Batman that's being brought in, it's Bruce Wayne. It's been several months since the events of Arkham Asylum, and with the asylum's failures on full display, drastic measures have been taken. An old district of the city has been walled off and turned into a giant super prison, Arkham City. It's a crazy, wild situation, and Batman can't do anything to fix it. But maybe Bruce Wayne, influential billionaire, can. Things don't go as planned, and in the midst of a press conference, Bruce is captured and taken into Arkham City, where the man in charge, Hugo Strange, reveals that he knows Bruce's secret.
Shut Arkham City down. It's out of control.
Shut it down. By the end of tonight, I will be a hero, just like you, Batman.
It's a powerful inversion of the first game in every way. In the first game, you were in a position of power, walking alongside the guards as the Joker was taken to his cell. This time, you're completely powerless, robbed of even the alter ego of Batman. It's the lowest point we've ever seen for Bruce. His worst fears come true. And it's only the first 2 minutes of the game. We're establishing exactly what Arkham City is about. Its whole goal is to break Batman, strip away everything he has just to see what happens. What does Bruce Wayne do on the worst night of his life? Second worst, I guess. The hits keep on coming as the game does an amazing job of showing how valuable the alter ego of Bruce Wayne is. The prisoners and the guards all see him as a spoiled rich guy who doesn't stand a chance in Arkham City, which is a sharp contrast to the fear that Batman instills. But Bruce Wayne is Batman, and in situations like this he won't let his secret get in the way of protecting people. He risks his identity by fighting back in order to protect fellow political prisoner Jack Ryder, even though it's quickly interrupted by one of the many super criminals you'll be punching tonight, the Penguin, and his amazing accent.
Wakey, wakey, Wayne. Oh, what's up? Do you need me to call you butler?
Cobblepot.
Oh, you remember me. I'm touched. Your family destroyed mine, Wayne. This, well, let's just call this good old-fashioned revenge.
Look, to be fair, this is like the only time a terrible Cockney accent is justified because the character himself is probably putting on a fake Cockney accent. We'll talk about the Penguin more later. For now, Bruce makes his escape and calls in the Batsuit. Welcome to Arkham City. It's going to be a long night. It would be one of the best openings to a game ever, if it wasn't for a tiny little detail that I forgot to mention.
It's Batman!
What the hell?
Sorry to disappoint you, boys. It's just little old me.
Let me take you back on a magical journey to 2011. It's an interesting time for video games. We don't have loot boxes yet, in-game currencies aren't really a thing that's taken off yet, but that doesn't mean the companies are less greedy. Oh no, because 2011 is the year that the publishers declared war on the used games market. See, back in the olden days, we used to buy games on these weird little things called discs, these weird little reflective donuts. And the thing with these discs is, once you were finished with them, you could pass them to someone else. You could pass them to a friend, or you could sell them for money. But the important part is, publishers didn't get a cut of that money. To combat this plague of people wanting cheaper games, publishers introduced this thing that I don't really have a name for, but I'm going to dub Asshole DLC. The basic concept of Asshole DLC is that it's a one-time use code in the box that unlocks something in the game. The idea being that you'd want to buy a new copy of the game so that you can get this cool thing. It started off as just like a special set of armour or a shiny gun, but things escalated when that wasn't working well enough. Multiplayer games started including multiplayer passes where without the code in the box you couldn't access the multiplayer component of the game, and single-player games started ripping important chunks out of the game unless you had the code. And so we get Catwoman. Arkham City has several points in the story where perspective shifts to Catwoman, who has an entirely separate story with a different gameplay feel and a totally different vibe. But only if you have the code. If you don't have the code, Catwoman still shows up, but you have no understanding of what she's even doing in Arkham City, and then she's gone as soon as she appears. It's bad. It's undoubtedly an inferior way to play the game, and that's why everyone hates Asshole DLC. And that's why companies don't do it anymore, and everything is much better these days. Right, guys? Right? You wouldn't keep monetizing more and more of the game experience until we're all living in a perpetually monetized nightmare hellscape of creative bankruptcy, right? Now, as far as Arkham City is concerned, this isn't really a problem anymore, since if you're buying the game these days, you're most likely buying the Return to Arkham Remaster, which comes with all of the DLC bundled. So, what's the problem? Well, here's the double twist. The Catwoman missions are kind of bad. When I said earlier that the game starts with Bruce Wayne being arrested, I lied. It actually starts with a totally random bit where you beat up a bunch of goons as Catwoman so she can break into a safe to get a thing that for some reason Two-Face has. It's a really bad way to start the game. It's confusing, it's irrelevant, and it's forgettable. I forget about it every time I replay the game, and that's because, like all of Catwoman's segments, the game is designed to work without it. The first one is especially bad because it's not even needed for the story and doesn't tell us anything important that we don't learn later. It explains why Two-Face is about to execute Catwoman, but he's a supervillain. Wanting to execute people for no particular reason isn't exactly out of character, and everything you need to know is explained in the courtroom scene anyway. Catwoman was trying to steal a thing, Two-Face caught her, Batman helps her escape, she gets the thing back. I follow pretty well without knowing that she beat up 5 mooks to get and lose the thing the first time. And as you'll see, that's basically true of all of Catwoman's segments going forward. They technically have new information, but it's not important information. Arkham City is a tangled web of criminals and conspiracies that you and Batman unearth over the course of the night. Meanwhile, the cat burglar is trying to burgle a thing. It really doesn't compare. And that's both a shame and not a shame. It's okay that these missions are superfluous because they're asshole DLC, and if they were important, that might be worse. But it's a shame because Catwoman is cool, and playing as her is cool. Batman inherits most of his moves and gadgets from the first game, but Catwoman plays completely different to him. She's faster and lighter on her feet, she has a different, more limited tool set, and even entirely different sound effects tied to her fights. She's also just having more fun. Batman is Mr. Dark and brooding, but Catwoman is quipping her way through the night, which makes for a nice contrast. Not that I fault Batman for being a bit broody. He has plenty to brood about. Right after saving Catwoman, Batman gets wrapped up in his second dastardly plot of the night with his old pal the Joker, who, as punishment for his time as a terrible boss fight, has become very sick. Hugo Strange has been babbling on about some sinister thing called Protocol 10, and based on the fact that sinister things usually involve the Joker, Batman heads to his section of Arkham City, the Old Steel Mill. Confronting the Joker, he fakes his death for the lols and manages to get the jump on Batman and knock him out. Not to demask him, something much worse, to inject him with his infected blood to make sure Batman is sufficiently motivated to find him a cure, and just to make sure he's sent the blood to every hospital in the city. And to top it all off, he doesn't have a clue what Protocol 10 is.
Take my blood, for example. I wish somebody would. This stuff is killing me.
Why should I care?
Because now, there's a teeny little bit of me in you too, Bats. Oh, come on! Don't tell me it's not what you always wanted.
So now Batman's been thrown in jail, his secret identity is known, and he's been infected by a deadly disease. And we're still not even done piling things on. Already you can see how much more complicated this game is compared to Arkham Asylum. That's not to say it's too complicated or hard to follow, but it's more complex, it's less streamlined, messier in a deliberate way, just like Arkham City itself. To add to the mess, the Joker had Mr. Freeze working on a cure, but he's not checked in because he's been captured by the Penguin, which means on top of everything else, now it's time to go deal with the Penguin as well. Oh, and also Joker kicks Batman out of a window and he blacks out and Catwoman goes to talk to Poison Ivy so she'll help her break into a secret vault. That's our main 2.5 plots established. 1. Unveiling the truth of Arkham City and stopping Hugo Strange and whatever Protocol 10 is. 2. Batman is dying of a disease given to him by Joker. 2.5. Catwoman wants to rob a big vault of stuff. However, these are not the only things Batman needs to deal with. Arkham City is filled to the brim with supercriminals and they've all got their own schemes to unravel. Along with the main plot, Arkham City introduces a series of optional side missions that feature some of Batman's less high-profile villains like Hush and Deadshot and the Riddler. Okay, so they aren't all low profile, but they are all mostly excellent, with a budget and attention to detail on par with the main story. Mr. Zsasz, for example, has taken up a new hobby of prank phone calls, with the little caveat that he's also killing people, and his mysterious phones will have Batman sprinting across the city to ensure the lives of his hostages. Hush is working on a personal scheme. The disgraced doctor is working on the ultimate project of recreating the face of his old friend turned rival Bruce Wayne, and to do so he's been murdering people and stealing parts of their faces. Bane has come to Arkham City for his own reasons. Some of the magic goo from the asylum has been snuck into this game as well. He wants you to blow it up for infringing on his copyright. Deadshot's side mission does tie into the main plot a little more. He was hired by Hugo Strange to find and eliminate people within Arkham City who had the potential to reveal his schemes, highlighting both the thoroughness and the paranoia of Strange. Not only is he having the contractors who built Arkham City arrested and thrown into the prison, he also hired the world's most deadly assassin to kill them. And of course, there's the Riddler, who I have to say is really putting in way more work than the rest of these guys. I mean, last time he just had a few question marks in the vents. This time he's set up these weird contraptions all across town and even has some pink ones just for Catwoman. Oh, and also some elaborate death chambers just for good measure. Alone, most of these missions are great, but together they're even better. While they're all totally optional, if you're being true to Batman's character, then you're going to do all of them, especially the ones where innocent people are in danger. The things that Batman has to do tonight just keep piling and piling on. He's already had his identity exposed and he's dying from a disease, and now he also has to deal with the Riddler's increasingly deranged games, multiple murderers running rampant, being briefly mind-controlled by the Mad Hatter, and the paranoia of literally being watched by a mysterious stranger. During the Hush investigation, Oracle even wonders if Batman has cracked. After all, they just found the fingerprints of Bruce Wayne on a murder weapon.
Bruce, I don't know how to say this, but...
What's wrong, Barbara?
I've been thinking about the identity theft case. Don't get angry. But how can you actually be sure that it wasn't you who killed those people? I mean, they were your fingerprints at the scene.
What did you say?
Not intentionally, but clearly you're not well. That place is full of maniacs who could take advantage of a situation like that. Think about it. What if Crane got to you again? You know Strange's reputation. Maybe he planted the idea back when you met him. I don't like it, but...
It wasn't me. I'm sure it wasn't.
Yeah, of course. I'm sorry. Well, you know...
Arkham City is his entire crime-fighting career condensed into one night. Every foe he's ever faced, all let loose in one place. It's all pushing on the age-old Batman rule, that he does not kill, even if it would make his life so much easier. Penguin's museum is a fortress, and adding to the confusion, both he and Joker's goons seem to have guns despite being in a prison. Batman adds yet another task when he finds a group of undercover cops who had infiltrated Penguin's gang and have been discovered and tortured, added to the list. The museum has more than just fossils on display, it's also got people up there too. Each enemy of Penguin with their own personal ironic display cabinet set up. Freeze has been stripped of his protective refrigerating suit by Penguin. Not for any particular wrong against the Penguin, just as a trophy. Much like his even bigger and badder trophy, the first major boss of the game.
Solomon Grundy, born on a Monday. Christened on Tuesday, married on Wednesday.
Solomon Grundy is a big immortal Frankenstein zombie Hulk thing, and like a whole bunch of Batman's villains seems way out of Batman's league, which is why it's such a great idea for a first boss. There is no way to punch Grundy till he goes down. Batman may be an expert combatant, but he's still just a man. That's why this is a test of brain instead of brawn. In this case, it's targeting the machinery that's charging Grundy instead of the guy himself. After beating Penguin and freeing Freeze, it's one wild goose chase onto the next. Freeze has a cure, but it's missing a key component, one that does not exist in modern science. So things will have to get a bit more old-fashioned. And as it just so happens, Ra's al Ghul is in Arkham City. Or rather, under it. Arkham City, the location, not the game, is just flat out one of the best designed maps in open world history. It's not massive, in fact you can get across the entire thing in a couple of minutes, but it's incredibly dense with detail and diversions. Basically, it takes everything that was established in Asylum and expands it to a small chunk of Gotham City itself. It has that same feeling of timelessness as the Asylum. There's modern technology mixed in with all this hyper-gothic architecture, and it shouldn't make sense, yet the combination of both just screams Batman. The game has a look and feel that's less spooky than Asylum, but more classically Batman, an aesthetic that would feel right at home in a comic book. Neon signs shining on dark and drainy gothic brick buildings that are crumbling with neglect. But it's the details that make Arkham City truly stand out. Arkham City has been under the jurisdiction of supercriminals for months, and they've all left their mark on the place. The city is split into 4 districts, one for each of the major gang leaders in the prison and an AC-flooded no man's land. Each district reflects the supercriminal who lives there. The Bowery is Penguin's domain, and like him, it's the most opulent and built-up part of the city. But it's a faded opulence, a district that once gleamed but fell to ruin, a ruin that set in long before the walls went up. Joker is set up in an old steel mill, with the entire complex turned into a weird and murderous funland, as is his trademark flair, an innocent and childish veneer laid on top of obvious danger. Two-Face is set up in the old courthouse, right in the centre of the city, between the Penguin's built-up domain and the flooded no man's land. I think the symbolism on that one needs no explanation. Each of the gangs also has their own style. The Joker's men are of course clown-themed, Penguin's goons dress for winter, and Two-Face's men burn half of their prison uniform to match their boss. As you play through the story and the balance of power changes, the goons start to switch sides. They have no real loyalty, so later in the game you'll fight Penguin goons wearing Joker masks, or with their uniforms burned for Two-Face. You can even overhear them chatting about current events as you glide through the city.
Trapped! There's got to be a way out. Looks like Penguin's making his move. Joker's guys are making theirs. And just to make things a little bit worse, Batman seems to be in here too. So, the last time I saw Batman, he broke 3 of my ribs, snapped my arm, and sent me to Blackgate. So what's he doing here? How the hell should I know?
You do quickly notice that every single one of them is voiced by the same 2 guys, but that's a video game trope that I, for one, am able to ignore. Like Asylum, the goal is not to be realistic. Everything is extruded, not loads, but just enough to be odd. A clear unreality that has the game looking closer to animation than live action, which serves the dual functions of looking fantastic and almost timeless, as well as hiding some of the weird video game isms of the design. Sure, in a realistic sense, the Penguin's Museum having a giant frozen lake right in the middle of it makes no sense at all, but in the odd hyper-gothic design of the game, it really doesn't seem that out of place. It has a very different atmosphere from the Asylum, but an equally effective one. The Asylum was a place designed to corrupt people. Arkham City is the result of that corruption. Torn up streets, ruined buildings, and an army of brutes fighting over the rubble. If they worked together, they could easily overpower the guards and escape, especially with Strange giving them guns. But they're all too petty and would rather fight each other than the guards. That's basically what Arkham City is. It's a playground for supercriminals, a worthless chunk of the city that they can all fight over while regular people live their normal lives. At least, that's how it was sold. There's even one more gang hiding in Arkham City, one far older and far more serious. The League of Assassins, hidden away in the ruins beneath Arkham City, an entire abandoned city below the crumbling streets of this one. Wonder City. Is Ra's al Ghul a famous enough Batman villain, or do I need to explain who that is? I mean, I didn't know who he was the first time I played the game, but that's because he looks nothing like Liam Neeson. I'm willing to admit that this may just be a me problem. The entirety of my foundational understanding of Batman and his villains comes from Lego Batman. Anyone who wasn't in the main roster of that game I just automatically consider to be an obscure villain. You'll have your day, Killer Moth. The world's just waiting for you. I know Ra's al Ghul was in Lego Batman, but he was a secret unlockable character unlocked at the very end of the game. That doesn't count, says I. Anyway, Ra's al Ghul is hiding beneath Arkham City, so to find him, Batman plants a tracker on a League of Assassins warrior that Penguin had in his museum, but not before a little birdie makes an appearance. Robin really isn't here for much more of a cameo in the base game, but, you know, it's nice to see him, I guess. He's worried about Batman, as you would be. As he fights through the ruins beneath the city, Batman's sickness starts to take hold, and by the time he reaches Wonder City itself, he's on the verge of death, which, combined with the odd, dreamlike Victorian steampunk architecture of the place, it starts to feel like you've wandered into another world. However, there is a somewhat friendly face down here to help him not die. This is where the game does a very brief recap of the whole Talia Batman League of Assassins deal, which is... And keep in mind, everything in comic books has about 50 different versions. The League of Assassins are a secret society led by Razuli Al Ghuli, a several hundred-year-old guy who uses a substance called Lazarus to keep himself alive that's also driving him insane the more he uses it. He trained Bruce Wayne during his mission to become the ultimate crime fighter, which is when Bruce also met Raz's daughter, Talia, and the two fell in love. Ra's approves of the relationship because he wants them to marry so that Batman will become the new head of the League, which he will complete by taking a life, that of Raz himself. If this is all new to you, the game does a fine job of quickly filling you in, which is good because it's about to become very important. To save his life, Batman agrees to take part in the ritual to become the new head of the demon, which involves drinking some of the Lazarus. It causes some extreme hallucinations, but also temporarily cures the effects of the disease. Of course, Batman was lying and never had any intention of killing Ra's, much to both he and Talia's disappointment. He just needed to get close enough to extract some blood. Returning to Freeze, Batman hands over the blood which stabilizes the cure. However, armed with his suit and gun and the one thing Batman needs, Freeze decides it's time to renegotiate the deal.
I'm afraid I cannot do that, Batman. You have given me your last order.
I haven't touched much on gameplay so far, so let's do that now for no particular reason at all. As I mentioned in the Asylum video, the gameplay of the Arkham series is almost identical game to game. There are 3 parts that the game cycles through: melee combat, predator mode, and exploration. Instead of changing or adding to these 3 parts, Arkham City simply takes what was already perfected and adds variation. With combat, that's simple: more variation in enemies to face, like these armoured guys, or the addition of a couple of mini-bosses throughout the game, as well as adding more combat options, like extra gadgets. Additions like that increase variety, but don't break the core gameplay feeling. The same hand was applied to both the Predator and Exploration phases as well. Additional obstacles and opportunities in Predator, like enemies who lay mines or are equipped with night vision goggles. And in the Exploration, a little bit of work was put into getting around the city with some improvements to gliding, as well as the most important new gadget in the game, the Grapnel Boost, which for some reason is locked behind an innocuous AR training side mission. It essentially allows you to propel yourself past whatever you were grappling to, so that you instead go sailing over it and into a quick glide, which allows you to get around the city significantly faster. As I say, all minor but meaningful improvements to the game over Asylum, and while it's not quite as fluid as Arkham Knight, it's pretty close to perfection. There is one element of gameplay that got a major overhaul, however, one that it desperately needed: boss fights. The boss fights in Arkham Asylum were, to put it bluntly, really bad. For example, here's the fight with the legendary Breaker of the Batman, Bane. Bane is a 12-foot tall behemoth of pure muscle and rage whose fists are larger than Batman's entire head. So what's his strategy? How can Batman possibly defeat him? Well, he charges at you, so you throw a batarang at his head, which disorients him so much he runs straight into a wall. Then you punch him up for a bit and rip out some of his green goo tubes, then a wave of goons jump in, and you repeat the process 3 times until Batman just runs him over with his car. And did I mention that they just reused the same animations and strategies for the monsterized goons who show up later? It's not awful, it's just a bit lackluster, that's all. So, when it came to Arkham City, a clear mandate was made. Make the boss fights better. Each boss fight has been tailored to suit the supervillain it's against. As mentioned with Solomon Grundy, he's more of a puzzle, using quick-fire explosive gel to damage machinery while avoiding his heavy-hitting attacks. Rapture Almec Gluttonous is appropriately a trial by combat with several different phases against many hallucinatory sandmen and then using gadgets to fight him in his giant form. These fights aren't especially hard, instead it's the visuals and the drama that's being prioritised. The really annoying name boss fight especially is visually stunning, and despite not being mechanically all that interesting, it's an amazing spectacle to watch unfold. Then, we get to Mr. Freeze, who happens to be one of the best and most iconic boss fights in video game history. At first glance, Freeze's fight is a typical Predator encounter, and in fact, the first time you come to this room it's to clear out a band of goons in the usual fashion. However, Freeze has two major advantages over your usual gang of thugs. One, he's armed with a freeze gun and an incredibly advanced suit of technology, and two, he isn't a moron. All of your usual Predator tactics will work on Freeze, but only once. If you sneak up on him and punch him in the back, then he'll put up a defensive aura. If you use a vent to pounce at him, then he'll fill all the vents with ice. If you use the generator to magnetize his suit, then he'll freeze all the generators. And you have to find at least 5 ways of getting to him. Also, because Freeze can track your footsteps, you need to be constantly moving to avoid being seen by him. None of this makes the boss fight especially hard. He's quite slow and easy to escape from if he does see you, but it is wonderfully tense, a moment where Batman has gone from predator to prey. It's not the difficulty of these boss fights that's important, it's the atmosphere and the mood, just like the rest of the game. So even though these boss fights aren't actually any more mechanically interesting than pelting Bane's shiny noggin with batarangs, they feel more interesting, and they capture the spirit of each of these supercriminals, putting you further in the shoes of Batman as he figures out these dangerous foes. During the distraction of the fight, Harley Quinn snuck in and stole the other vial of cure, so Batman sets off back to the steel mill to get it back. After all, Joker does promise to give him some. Before going off, Freeze does give a heartfelt plea that Batman look for his wife, which is an optional side mission, but given that Freeze's wife is an innocent woman currently being held by the Joker, it seems like an easy request to fulfill. Inside the steel mill, Protocol 10, which, by the way, Strange has been counting down to in the background as everything's been happening, is coming to the last minutes, and Oracle starts reporting on what's going on outside of Arkham City. Strange has gone to the City Council to request their permission to initiate Protocol 10. Apparently, everything has gone wrong at Arkham City. The prisoners have guns, they're running rampant, escape and chaos are inevitable. Protocol 10 is the only solution. Meanwhile, over the Tannoy, Joker is back in full health and ready to go a murdering, so the immediate concern is finding him and the cure. Along the way though, you find something very odd. Harley Quinn tied up and gagged in a hidden away corner. Insert your horny comments here. However, for whatever reason, neither Batman or Harley comment on it to preserve a minor twist later. There's a big punch up at the top of the steel mill which ends with Joker getting the upper hand when the ceiling collapses and Batman is pinned under some rubble. He's about to kill Batman when Talia emerges from the shadows and offers Joker the job that Batman declined, head of the League of Shadows, and more importantly, the secret of immortality.
We offered you this chance, Batman. Now follow your heart.
Then Batman passes out, so you know what that means, it's time for another Catwoman mission. Poison Ivy agrees to help her break into Strange's vault, which she does. Then Protocol 10 happens, and she has to decide to help Batman instead of escaping with her stolen stuff, because apparently, A, Strange's top secret vault has a door that leads straight into the streets of Gotham, that's weird, and B, the fate of the entire world is entirely dependent on Catwoman helping Batman lift some rubble off his chest. Rubble lifted, the truth of Protocol 10 unfolds in front of you. It's a pretty simple plan when you get right down to it. Kill everyone in the city with rockets and machine gun equipped helicopters. But it's an incredibly impactful and cinematic moment, watching and seeing the destruction unfold, knowing that there's no way you can save everyone. And it would have been even more impactful if this was the first time you see it. But the first time you see it is over the radio announcements with Catwoman as you break into the vault, which take a hell of a lot of the sting out of it. It's bad, but it's it's not awful, because it doesn't take the punch out of the true emotional core of the scene, this exchange.
Oracle. Strange is launching missile strikes on Arkham City from Wonder Tower. You shut this place down. Joker's taken Talia. I'm going after them.
You can't. Hundreds will be killed. I need your help to stop the attack.
He'll kill Talia.
You need to think this through. Batman can't let all these people die.
My tracker's not activating. Reroute all Wayne Tech satellites to boost the signal.
I can't do that. I realize it is difficult, Sam. But you need to decide if one life is worth sacrificing to save 1,000.
Don't do this, Alfred.
Batman must save Gotham. I'm sorry, but deep down, you know I'm right.
It's a classic superhero conundrum, to be sure, save the girl or save the world, but with a classic Batman twist. It's not the world that needs saving, it's the thieves and murderers you've been beating to a pulp all night. It's very easy to see why their lives might matter less to Bruce than the women he loves, but that's why Batman needs his allies. So many Batman adaptations lean really heavily on the brooding loner elements of Batman, and those are certainly a big part of the character. But those darker impulses are exactly why Batman keeps so many colourfully dressed teenagers around him. They keep him in check, they keep his perspective in line. After all, he is just a man with regular human emotions. He isn't always right, and he knows that. So with a little reality check from an old friend, he sets about stopping Strange and Protocol 10. You climb to the top of Wonder Tower, the centre of Strange's operations, and confront the man himself. Batman tries to show him the horror he's inflicted, and he couldn't be happier. His life's work is coming to fruition. After Gotham, Metropolis, Keystone, Bloodhaven, all of them cleansed of criminal filth.
This is just the beginning. You cannot stop me. Soon I will command forces beyond your comprehension. I have achieved what the great Batman could never do. Gotham will forever thank Hugo. Strange!
Your part in this is over, Professor Strange.
I've been going back and forth on how I feel about this twist while writing the script for this video because it's an odd one. On the one hand, if you're familiar with Rachel Gould and his whole deal, then it's not much of a twist at all. Violently cleansing the world of all evil is kind of his whole deal. On the other hand, it's not really a big reveal that changes anything about the story. It's actually kind of funny. Strange gives this big villain monologue about being the true hero, and then minutes later Bacon Rashers gives the exact same speech. It's not that Ravioli Goulash is a less interesting villain than Strange, but as far as this game goes, he's a less developed one. Strange has been the face of Arkham City from the very beginning, the one at the forefront concocting all of the schemes, where Razzie's only other appearance in the game is firmly rooted in the dealing with his own stuff category. It's not a poorly set up twist by any means, in fact it makes perfect sense. It's why Arkham City happens to be built on top of a Lazarus pit in Wonder City, which also happens to be the city that Ratchet himself built up hundreds of years ago, his first attempt at utopia crumbling beneath his newest attempt. I think ultimately it doesn't sit completely right with me because Ra's al Ghul is a figure of magic and ninjas, where Hugo Strange is a figure of political corruption and conspiracies. And that's just much more interesting to me. Uncovering the truth of Arkham City is in of itself a kind of side activity in the game that's spread out across many collectibles, side missions and main story events. It's not necessary to delve into the mystery in order to enjoy and understand the game. However, if you do go hunting, there's answers to almost every question to be found, and they all start with our old pal Warden Quincy Sharp. If you don't recall the last time we talked about this guy, he was scrawling runes in the walls of Arkham Asylum, convinced he'd been possessed by the spirit of Amadeus Arkham, the asylum's initial founder, and was on a quest of vengeance against the criminal scum of Gotham City. Well, in the year since the events of the first game, that guy got elected mayor. He took credit for everything Batman did during the events of that game and used it as fuel to build Arkham City, a place where criminals would be truly secure and the streets of Gotham would be safe. The reality was, Sharp was just a pawn of Hugo Strange, who'd been using hypnotism to influence Sharp for years. In fact, it was Strange who planted the idea in Sharp's head that he was the spirit of Arkham. And just in case you were wondering how Hugo Strange learned hypnotism, the game explains that too. He coerced the strategies out of the Mad Hatter when he was a doctor at the asylum. Using Sharp as proxy, Strange set up Arkham City. He hired an advanced force of guards and implanted a hypnotic suggestion in their minds to make them unquestioningly loyal, and they basically acted as his private army. Then he set about gathering up every significant supercriminal in Gotham. Once they were all secure in Arkham City, including Batman, it was simply a matter of escalation. Slip all 3 gangs high-grade military hardware, and then let old grudges handle the rest. With Protocol 10 already established in the minds of City Council, it was an easy enough matter to use the escalating violence to sell Protocol 10 as the only viable option. And when they inevitably give the go-ahead, Gotham is wiped clean. It's a small detail, but it speaks to how well the plan was thought out that Strange starts counting down to Protocol 10 hours before he even asks permission. He already knows what they'll say. It's a great scheme and a great villain plot, extremely well considered in the details. But what makes it such a great scheme for Batman in particular is that it's a problem that Batman just isn't equipped to solve. Sure, when the missiles are actually being launched, that's a problem Batman can punch away. But the council voting for the, and let's not mince words here, the genocide of every criminal in the city, that's not a problem you can punch away. It's the natural conclusion of the train of thought that starts with, things would be so much easier if Batman killed people. Sure, if you start with one guy, it doesn't seem so bad, but suddenly you're killing every criminal in the city at once, and things don't look so peachy. And I think there's a reflection there on how we as a society view the idea of prison and capital punishment. Prisons are weird, and the way we talk about prisons is weird. To boil an incredibly long and complex debate down, there is a fundamental disagreement on what prisons are for. Are they to reform criminals so that they can rejoin society later on, or is prison a punishment for those who have committed crimes? The reality of our current day prison system leans much closer to the latter. Prison is the place you go when you commit crimes. It is, in a sense, a deterrent against committing crimes. If you commit crimes, you go to jail and you can no longer participate in society. Also, they're bad and scary and don't drop the soap, etc., etc. Then this evolves into a darker debate. If prisons are just a deterrent to crime, if they're not a place that meaningfully stops people from doing crimes, if they're instead just a place where bad people stay forever, then why bother? Why not just kill them and be done with it? That is a kind of reasoning that some people use to defend the death penalty. If this person will never be a contributing member of society again, then why waste the money keeping them alive? If we're talking about the likes of the Joker, mass murderers with no intention of changing their ways, then what's the point in paying for them? Other arguments include revenge, an eye for an eye, a life for life. If someone kills another person, their life should also be forfeit. Or the argument that Hugo Strange uses, that killing murderers and criminals is for the safety of innocent people, that there can't be any murderers if you kill all the murderers. I think if you suggested to the average supporter of the death penalty that we just kill everyone currently incarcerated in a prison, they'd probably feel a bit squeamish about that, but functionally it follows the same logic. Arkham City is an exaggeration of prisons, taking the concept of a prison and just making it bigger. Strange's plan is the same exaggeration applied to capital punishment, and it turns out when you exaggerate that to its endpoint, it looks a lot like fascism. Suddenly, we're talking about cleansing the city of filth and firing missiles at the walled-in part of town where all the bad people go. Suddenly, arguments about safety and security start to look very suspicious. There's been a long-running argument that Batman is a fascist, and on the surface, it's not an uncompelling argument. He's a rich guy who beats up lower-class people based on a sense of justice that he alone has decided. And there have been versions of Batman who totally are fascist, where the writers have leaned into it. But Arkham City is not one of those, and it demonstrates that through a contrasting example. It all comes back to the rule. Batman does not kill. Why not? This is why. Protocol 10 is the logical endpoint of the thought that starts with, this person doesn't deserve to live. The key of it is, Batman does not discriminate. He does not judge people based on skin colour or religious practices or gender or class, only on their actions. And even then, even to the most evil of monsters, he will not pass ultimate judgment. He will not kill them. He will always give them a chance to do better. With his dying breath, Strange tries to kill both Batman and Raspberry with an explosion, but Batman grabs Rabbie and dives out the window to safety, only for Rosebud to stab himself on the way down, just to make a point really. Joker has seen through Talia's deception and invites Batman to come and try and rescue her at the site of the final showdown, Monarch Theatre, which happens to be the same theatre that Bruce Wayne's parents were murdered behind. Joker doesn't know the significance of all that, so I guess it's just a happy coincidence. Inside the theatre, a seemingly cured Joker asks Batman to hand over the cure, which seems odd, but before that can be dwindled on, Talia stabs Joker dead. She stole the cure from Harley and tied her to a post, and Sarah Hardy comments here again. But something's wrong. The maths doesn't add up, and too little too late, Batman figures it out. There are two Jokers, one sick and one healthy. Unfortunately, it's too late, and the real Joker shoots Talia in the back.
Confusing, isn't it? I know I'd want to know just what the hell is going on if I were you. Let's just say, at times like these, it's important to keep up appearances. But first, if you would be so kind, hand over my cure. Ladies and gentlemen, for one night only, standing in for yours truly, and doing a damn fine job of it, I give you Clayface.
It's not a twist that comes out of nowhere. In fact, it's very heavily foreshadowed throughout the game, which you'll notice especially on a second playthrough. The bigger thought I had was deja vu, because haven't we done this already? It's the end of the game, Joker just turned into a big monster, and we're having a multi-stage boss fight with them. I mean, this one is slightly better, but that bar is so low that it's literally fallen through the floor. The Clayface reveal is fun, and it's well explained with that line. It is important to keep up appearances. However, part of me can't help but wonder if we've fallen into the same trap as Arkham Asylum after all. It's the end of a video game, so of course we need a big boss fight. It's also just a massive coincidence that Monarch Theatre was built directly above the Lazarus Pit and Joker had explosives rigged that would make a hole directly into the chamber without destroying the pit. Are we sure he's a Joker and not a Sivan? After Clayface is defeated and kinda seems like killed, but I don't know if you even can kill a dude entirely made of clay, so let's pretend so for Batman's sake. After defeating Clayface, Batman is finally able to take the cure. There's just one problem left.
Quick! The cure! What are you waiting for? Come on! I killed your girlfriend, poisoned Gotham in hell. It's not even breakfast. But so what? We all know you'll save me.
Every decision you've ever made ends with death and misery. People die. I stop you. You'll just break out and do it again.
Think of it as a running gag! No! Are you happy now?
Do you want to know something funny? Even after everything you've done, I would have saved you.
You know, that actually is pretty funny.
The boss fight with Clayface was just a bit of fluff. This is the true end of the game, and it's so much more interesting than any big monster ever could be. There's so much going on with this scene, so many emotions running through both characters' minds. It's the moment where this video gets its title. It's the moment that Batman is truly broken. Batman hesitates before giving Joker the cure. He's right. Joker will never be better. He will never take the endless chances Bruce has given him to do better. He will always choose evil. The fight then is essentially meaningless, right? Maybe it would be better to just let him die. And there's that thought in the back of his head, never vocalised but made clear through the performance nonetheless. Maybe I should have killed Joker. Maybe every death he's ever caused has actually been on my hands. Joker takes this moment of hesitation to strike, his nihilism not allowing for the possibility that Batman would still save him after all of this, and that's what ultimately causes his death. Because despite it all, Batman would have saved him. His moment's hesitation not enough to break him completely, but that hesitation took the decision out of his hands, and in the end, that's what breaks him. It's not Talia, the love of his life, that Batman carries out of the theatre at the end. It's his most hated rival. Why? It seems like an odd move. It certainly makes it look to all the onlookers like Batman just killed the Joker, and he does absolutely nothing to change that perception. Probably because he believes it's true. Joker killed Talia, there's no doubt about that. Maybe if he'd been faster he could have saved her, but her blood is on Joker's hands. Joker died because Batman thought about killing him. That hesitation to save him is why Joker died. Joker being dead is a symbol of Batman's failure. He broke his rule. He killed someone. He has become the very thing he always fought against. Now, obviously, given all these facts, there's no feasible way that you can blame Batman for Joker's death. He died of a disease that he gave himself because he attacked the guy holding the cure by stabbing him in the shoulder. It's not Batman's fault. It's just not. But that doesn't matter. It's what Batman, in his emotionally weakened state, concludes, and he hates himself for it. Because the worst part is, Joker being dead is good. Joker being dead makes the world a better place with one less monster in it, and the only people who'll mourn his passing are his fellow monsters who worshipped him. And if that's the case, maybe Batman shouldn't exist. Maybe everything he's ever done, his entire life's work, has been for nothing. He would have saved Joker, and that probably would have been the wrong thing to do. And that's where we leave the game, with this tangled mess of conflicting emotions. The day was won, lives were saved, Gotham's two biggest monsters are dead, so why does it feel so wrong? It's such a bold place to end the game. It tells a complete story, it's not a cliffhanger in the traditional sense, it just leaves our hero in an emotionally shattered place. The day is saved, and he'll never be the same because of it. Oh, and in case you were wondering, there's a Catwoman mission after the credits where she goes back to her house and then Two-Face tries to blow her up for revenge and stuff, so she goes to find him to beat him up and get her things back. But he only has half of her stuff, so she has to run around the open world beating up random mooks to get the rest of it, and that's the final beat of the story.
I only took half. The rest I gave away. I win, bitch!
Enough with the twos already.
A poetic ending if ever there was one. I know I've been very harsh on the Catwoman segments throughout this video, and I just want to reiterate that these missions are fine. They're nothing special, but they aren't bad. It's just that the method of delivery for them is so at odds with the pacing and drama of the main campaign. This is one time where having these missions be accessed from a side menu would make way more sense. Something to play after the main campaign is over to fill in some extra details for you. Arkham City didn't have masses of DLC, mostly extra skins and a couple extra characters to play in the challenge mode levels like Nightwing. However, there was one extra chunk of story added, and it was actually accessed via a menu, an epilogue to the whole game, and maybe a little taster of what's to come as well. Harley Quinn's Revenge.
I'm in. Any news, Barb?
No. He's been gone 2 days. I'm worried. You know what he's been like since...
I'll find him.
I hope you're right.
Harley Quinn's preparing for some kind of siege. What's she planning?
Find Batman and get the hell out of there, okay?
Don't worry, Barb. It's me, remember?
You sound just like him.
It It's been a few weeks since the events of Arkham City, and Batman has gone missing. He was last seen investigating the site of the old steel mill, where Harley Quinn has reclaimed Joker's part of the old prison as a fortress. Acting as the new de facto head of his gang, Robin has come to find and rescue his old mentor. It's a compelling enough setup, but for me the main draw of this DLC is that it stars Robin, and I like Robin. There was a phase during the Dark Knight era where we all apparently decided that Robin is dumb and corny and that Batman works better as a solo act, but I've always loved the Bat family and Bruce's extended list of adopted sons. As mentioned in the last video, this is a late career Batman, so the Robin in this game is actually the third Robin, Tim Drake. The first Robin, Dick Grayson, has already moved on to become his own hero, Nightwing, and the second Robin, Jason Todd, is dead, though that's not really dwelled upon in this game. Tim Drake's a very different figure to Batman. He's young and eager to prove himself, though that doesn't make him reckless like you might expect from a character who fits that description. In the comic book fandom, Tim Drake is widely considered to be the best Robin. He's just very easy to like. He's kind of like a version of Bruce without all the emotional baggage. If you're not familiar with Tim's backstory, which given the fact that we've never seen Tim in a movie, and at this rate we probably never will, here's an overview. Tim Drake was in the audience of the circus when the Flying Graysons, the first Robin's parents, were killed, and watched as Batman saved their son. When he later saw that Bruce Wayne had adopted Dick and that Batman seemingly had a new partner, he quickly deduced that Bruce Wayne was Batman. But he didn't do anything with that info since he wasn't about to start blackmailing them or anything. Instead, he started training so that one day he could join them in their crusade. Cut to several years later, and the second Robin, Jason Todd, has been killed. Batman has been much harsher than usual on the criminals, and Tim figures it's because he's in mourning and needs some help. So he heads up to Wayne Manor to audition as the next Robin. Bruce is reluctant, but with some persuasion from Alfred and Dick, he takes on Tim as the third Robin. That's kind of the start of why I like Tim, and to be clear, I'm not a comic book reader. Most of my knowledge of the Bat family comes from this series and perusing of various fan wikis. Both of the previous Robins were taken in by Batman because of their shared orphan bonding and taught to take out those emotions in the same way Batman does. Tim volunteered. He's here because he believes in the cause. Hence why I say he doesn't have the emotional baggage of Batman. His parents usually aren't even dead. While this short DLC doesn't have time to go into all that, I think that part of his character shines through perfectly. He's young and he's confident, but it's an earned confidence based on his abilities. Like Catwoman, he has an entirely different fighting style and set of gadgets, though he has a lot more gadgets than Catwoman. He also, unlike Batman or Catwoman, fights with a weapon, a collapsible staff that he incorporates into his fighting style. With all of this explained, you'll probably now understand why it frustrates me that you only actually play as Robin for like half of this already short campaign. Robin infiltrates the facility behind the steel mill and fights through a few tunnels to uncover exactly what's going on. The gang has gone through a major rebrand, all wearing Harley's colours instead of Joker's. She's also kidnapped several cops and is holding them hostage, which is why Batman came in the first place. After sneaking around and punching a few goons, Robin discovers Batman's utility belt, and then, for some reason, the DLC flashes back 2 days so we can see firsthand what happened to Batman. He saves one of the cops from the goons harassing him and traces the other cops back to Harley Quinn's secret hideout, but not before a tiny open-world mission in the steel mill part of the base game, slightly reskinned with more snow, where you now have to run around and beat the passcode out of some dudes. Inside the shipping warehouse facility, he finds another one of the cops, but then when Harley Quinn is about to shoot the cop, Batman takes the bullet, which knocks him unconscious somehow. I know that seems like a short little interlude, but I'm not joking when I tell you that this little flashback is about half the length of the DLC. It's a very short DLC, which is why this elongated flashback with Batman seems so out of place, especially since it doesn't tell us anything we didn't already know. Except, I guess, that Batman has an off switch if you shoot him right here. Essentially then, Batman has become the Catwoman of his own game. Robin presses into the next room and finds Batman locked in a glass dome being held by a massive statue of Joker. Bit weird. He's running out of air and has entered a meditative state to preserve oxygen. Robin goes hunting for the key to let Batman down, which he of course finds in Harley Quinn's cleavage. Then he has a massive brawl in the room in front of Batman, who is finally set free. Harley reveals she has bombs planted around the facility, and for some reason you play as Batman again while going around to stop them. Before returning to this room again, where the repainted robot guardians of Wonder City come to life, programmed by Harley Quinn to kill you. She sets off the final bomb within the Joker shrine, and Batman dives out with her to safety. It looks like Robin is dead, but then he isn't, and then Batman leaves and the DLC is over. It's a very strange, very oddly paced little chunk of story, and based on that description, it might seem like a bit of a waste of time. But there are some interesting things in this DLC that are worth talking about, primarily to do with Batman himself. Batman is very dark and very cold in this DLC, and that more than anything is the point of this DLC. It's a glimpse at the new post-Joker death Batman, and it's not a pretty sight. He's flying this mission solo, not chatting to anyone over the comms like he had been the entirety of Arkham City and Asylum. He's distant from the cops he's rescuing. After rescuing all the folks in the main campaign, he'd offer at least some words of comfort, but now it's all business. Even the cop can tell something is off.
You okay? Don't want to talk? No problem. I'll just be waiting here.
When the people you've just saved are asking you if you're okay, you know you've got some issues. This coldness is demonstrated especially through his interactions with Robin. While his interactions in the base game were kind of cold, they were clearly coming from a sort of gruff mentor who actually cares kind of place. Now it's all business.
What kept you?
Ever heard of thank you?
What happened to the cops?
I guess not.
He shut himself off. Oracle and Robin talk about how he hasn't said anything about the death of Talia or Joker, and since he doesn't talk, like Oracle and Robin, we can only speculate at what's going on in his head. Which I've already done, so no need to reiterate. But this is why I think the decision to split this DLC so it's kinda mostly starring Batman again was silly. I think having us as the audience now be locked outside of Batman's perspective would have been a creative way to reinforce that distance between him and the rest of the Bat family, because it still sort of does that. It just doesn't fully commit. At the very end, he shows a hint of rage when he thinks Harley Quinn has just killed Robin. He does care deeply about Robin and his safety, but as soon as it's revealed that he's safe, it's back to cold and uncaring.
So, did you miss me?
Where are the cops?
They're safe.
I'm done here.
Hey, kid. Is he all right?
Yeah, sure. Of course he is.
It's a short DLC, but nevertheless I think it does a good job of setting up a sequel. Batman has issues that he really needs to work through, but he's pushing away the people that can help him do that. Likely because he knows exactly what they'll say, that it's not his fault, and that it's okay, and maybe just, give the poor guy a hug. He really needs one. He doesn't want help. He wants to waste away in misery, and there's not much you can do to help a person that doesn't want to help themselves. His emotional state is clearly affecting his ability to be Batman. He's getting sloppy, making mistakes, getting extra mean on criminals. He's going to get himself killed if it continues this way. And that's the true end of Arkham City. Not with Batman carrying Joker, not with I win, bitch, but with Robin, worried about what's going to happen to his mentor. This has been a hard video to make. Arkham City is considered the gold standard when adapting superheroes to video games, and it's easy to see why, but it's hard to explain why. I sometimes wonder if later folks took the wrong lessons from this game, that what made it great was its grit, or the specifics of its gameplay. But the truth is, what makes it great is how well it stands on its own as a Batman story. It goes beyond mere adaptation and makes its own creative decisions that give it a unique and yet familiar place in the wider Batman world, a place that could only be created with the video game media. So, how do you follow up one of the biggest, most famous, and most influential games of all time? Well, developer Rocksteady pulled a wildcard move and said, you don't. You force it on some other stat to take the brunt of that expectation instead. As such, before we move forward to see how Batman can be rebuilt, we're going to go back to see how Batman was first made. I hope you'll join me next time for Batman Arkham Origins. Building Batman.
What the hell happened in there? Batman! What happened?
Thank you very much for watching, and a very special thank you to my patrons, especially Joe LD. If you'd like to join Joe up here, you can find my Patreon linked in the description below, and if you're not feeling that generous, you can also like, comment, share, and subscribe. All the usual stuff. I have plenty more videos around here that you might be interested in, like the first part of this series where I talk about Arkham Asylum, or maybe you want to check out my podcast where, because me and my co-host forgot to record for 7 months, we catch up on a lot of the stuff we missed.
I win, bitch.